Every empire thinks it's untouchable, right? They look at the ruins of past civilizations, at the fallen stones and the faded glory, and they go, "That could never happen to us." But history has this wild way of repeating itself, like it's following a script that feels almost like a predictable roller coaster ride. Today, let's dive into that script, a six-stage pattern of revolutionary change that has toppled some of the world's most powerful empires. And you might be wondering as you look around at our own world, is America next on this ride? Let us take a little trip back to France in 1789. The French monarchy was living it up in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles, completely oblivious to the struggles of the common people who were literally starving in the streets of Paris. They were all about luxury, about silks and feasts, while the masses were suffering, their desperation rising with the price of bread. Fast forward to Russia in 1917, where the empire was crumbling from the inside, drowning in corruption and military blunders on the Eastern Front. The Tsar was utterly detached, his court a bubble of privilege, and don't forget Cuba in 1959, where a once thriving middle class found themselves crushed between a corrupt dictator and a collapsing economy, their dreams evaporating, which sparked a radical uprising in the hills. These weren't just random explosions of chaos. They were the result of a series of events, a predictable process that led to monumental change. Historians and political scientists have spent decades piecing together a clear pattern that tends to precede major societal collapse. It's not just one big event that kicks everything off, like a single lightning strike. It's more like a domino effect, a chain reaction where one piece falling makes the next inevitable. And guess what? It doesn't start with the poor. Nope. It kicks off with a breakdown of trust at the very top, among the people who are supposed to be running the show. So let's break this down stage by stage, shall we? The first stage is what we might call normal times. This is when the government is feeling pretty secure, the ruling class is cozy in their positions, and any opposition is small, scattered, and easily brushed aside. Life just kind of rolls on, and the foundations of the state seem solid, unshakable even. Most folks are just going with the flow, even if they're not totally thrilled with the status quo. They pay their taxes, they follow the laws, they grumble a little, but ultimately go about their business. It's like everyone's living in a bubble, thinking everything's just fine, that this is just how the world works and always will. But then, things start to shift. Enter stage 2, the failure of the elites. This is when intellectuals, journalists, and academics begin to raise their voices, openly criticizing the regime. They start pointing out the hypocrisy, the incompetence, and the injustice. It's like a snowball effect. They chip away at the government's legitimacy, questioning its very right to rule. Think about Voltaire and Rousseau in France. These guys were like the rock stars of their time, and their writings spread like wildfire through coffee houses and salons, challenging the divine right of kings. Their words, their sharp critiques, gave a voice to the frustrations simmering beneath the surface. This intellectual dissent is the first crack in the dam, a small fissure that begins to let the pressure out. Before long, these ideas spill out of the intellectual circles and into the streets, leading us to stage 3, widespread popular anger. It's no longer just a few writers and professors who are unhappy. It's everyone. The middle class, which is usually the backbone of a stable society, starts to feel the pinch. They see their savings disappearing, opportunities dwindling, and their children's futures looking pretty bleak. This is a critical tipping point, when the middle class loses faith and realizes they have more to lose by keeping things the same than by shaking things up. That's when the revolution really gains momentum. In Russia, it was the urban professionals and minor officials. In Cuba, it was the shop owners and skilled workers. In both cases, it was the radicalization of the middle class that turned general discontent into a full-blown movement. This growing anger opens the door for stage 4, the transfer of power. A new group of leaders, charismatic, organized, and promising a brighter future, steps into the void. They rally the disillusioned masses and create parallel institutions, almost like a shadow government that starts to earn more loyalty than the actual state. People begin to ignore the old regime, they stop paying taxes, they form their own militias, and they throw their support behind these new leaders. The authority of the state starts to crumble. its commands becoming mere suggestions, even if the government is still technically in charge and sitting in its old palaces. But don't think the old guard is just going to roll over and hand over the keys to the kingdom. Oh no, this leads us to the most chaotic and violent phase, Stage 5 Civil War. The forces of the state clash with the revolutionary armies. This is the point of no return, a brutal struggle to determine who gets to control the future of the nation. It's a bloody, messy affair where neighbor turns against neighbor. The French Reign of Terror, with its guillotines, and the Russian Civil War, with its mass executions, weren't just flukes. They were the predictable outcome of two competing claims to power, and they were messy, to say the least. It's the fire that burns away the old order. If the revolution is successful, we finally reach Stage 6, the restoration of order. A new leader often emerges from the chaos, and they're usually more authoritarian than before. Think about Napoleon Bonaparte after the French Revolution, crowning himself emperor, or Vladimir Lenin after the Russian one, establishing a one-party state. These leaders consolidate power, crush any remaining opposition, and establish a new normal. The revolution wraps up, and a new regime takes the stage, promising stability after all that turmoil. The cycle is complete, and a new era begins, often looking strangely familiar to the one it replaced. Now let's bring it back to today. Where does the United States in 2025 fit into this whole pattern? Let's take a look at some warning signs. First off, we've got extreme wealth inequality. Recent stats show that the gap between the richest and poorest Americans is at its highest level in over 50 years. A tiny sliver of the population controls a massive chunk of the nation's wealth, which is eerily similar to the conditions leading up to the French Revolution. When people start feeling like the system is rigged, when they see billionaire space races while they struggle to pay rent, their loyalty to that system begins to fade. And that's a recipe for unrest. Next up is the perceived government corruption and incompetence. Trust in public institutions is hitting historic lows. From Congress to the courts, a lot of Americans feel like their government is working for special interests and the wealthy, not for them. They see gridlock and inaction on the big issues. This loss of faith is a textbook sign of Stage 2 and 3. When people think their voices don't matter, when they believe the system is fundamentally broken, they start looking for alternatives, for someone outside the system to fix it. Then we have the hollowing out of the middle class. The American dream was built on the idea that hard work would lead to a better life, right? But today, many middle-class families are struggling with stagnant wages, skyrocketing living costs for housing and healthcare, and crushing student debt. They feel betrayed and left behind, and that creates a fertile ground for radical ideas to take root, whether they come from the left or the right. The backbone of stability is starting to ache. And let's not forget about the loss of faith in a shared reality. We're seeing a collapse in trust for traditional sources of information, like the media. Society is splintering into echo chambers where political extremism gets amplified, and compromise feels impossible. When we can't even agree on basic facts, on what is true, how on earth are we supposed to tackle our problems together? This breakdown of a common narrative is a powerful accelerant for the other stages. Now, I want to be clear. This isn't about predicting a specific date for a collapse. It's about recognizing historical patterns. The Roman, French, Russian, and Cuban empires all thought they were exceptional, and they all ignored the warning signs until it was too late. The real question isn't whether the United States is immune to history, but whether it can learn from it. The journey from reform to revolution is a long one, but the road signs are pretty clear, and we're seeing a lot of them. Sure, the challenges we face are immense, but understanding them is the first step toward finding a different path. We can't just sit back and hope things will magically get better. It's going to take awareness, engagement, and a willingness to fight for change, to mend the cracks before the dam breaks. So what do you think? Are we witnessing history repeating itself, or is this time truly different? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this analysis eye-opening, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the patterns that shape our world. Thanks for tuning in.